And when he shot, that bear charged. And this is a for real charge. And that bear hits that alder, and that Y is on his body like this. And that bear was pushing on those alders and snapping and just raising Cain. And I said, now remember, 2 bullets. I said, he's coming. Shoot him again, bolt the gun. He bolts, no hit. The bear turns and breaks and goes down the edge and comes out, and there's like a little opening in the road. And here he's coming. That same front and back. I had a guy that was waiting on the float plane and wanting to, he had killed a caribou and I've forgotten what else. And this is nothing on him. This is just human nature. Guys hadn't been around this. And we're down waiting on the plane to come in. But the problem is with weather, you book 10 days, you may not get home for 17. You may be there a week because those low pressure systems come in and you're there. You try to fly, you die. You don't fly in all those mountains. And so you have to have the days. So you wait and you never know what the weather's going to roll in so you can get out of the camp or not. And we were waiting on the plane. I look down there and I see the finest silver-tip grizzly you've ever, and these are inland grizzlies. These are the brown bears are big, but they get big. Do y'all know the difference in a brown bear and a grizzly? You know how they're classified? This is a cool thing. Now, if they're within 75 miles of the coast, because the brown bear eats salmon, they're classified brown bear. If they're not, they're grizzlies. Grizzlies are the badass blue-collar guy. They work for that living. They're the ones that you don't want to mess with. The brown bears are bad, too, when they want to be. But they're interested in eating and gorging and eating those salmon. But there's this beautiful grizzly. And I said, come on, let's go get that bear. And he said, he'd never been around bears. I don't know. I said, no. I said, and we had tags already that we'd bought before we went into camp. And finally he said, okay. So we go down there and that bear's is slick open. He's eating blueberries. And when they're eating blueberries, they're down there and that head is swinging. And they're picking those berries off that tree when that head's swinging. And we got up and I would like to get them into about 75 yards and just have the wind in your favor. And there was one little grown-up area, about the size of 2 of the houses here. And it's naked. I'm talking about above tree line. And I said, look, when you shoot him now, put it, don't get on the shoulder, but get in the vitals. And he shoots and that bear rolls over like doing a somersault and goes in that thicket. And there's a hill about as high as this roof above that thicket. And I thought, oh, that's good. He said, what do you think? I said, I think you hit him pretty good. I said, you poked him good. I said, let's wait. And we waited about an hour. And and he was really nervous about it. And I asked him, I said, how do you feel about the shot? He said, no, I think it was good. He had 4 bullets in his gun, 3 now. This is, and I'm telling you the gospel, how this happened. And so I said, look, I'm going to go make sure he's dead. And he goes, no, you're not going to leave. I said, look, all I'm going to do is walk upwind and let my scent go through there. And if he doesn't blow out, he's probably dead. So I eased up there, nothing, came back. And he said, what do you think? And of course, this is 10-foot alders in this little patch. And I said, let me see. And I picked up a rock, about a little bigger than a softball. And I pitched it, and I said, let's try one more time on this. And I pitched it in there, and we're up about 15 feet above this patch. That was how I could throw that rock in there. And when I did, dead in the middle of this little patch about the size, all of a sudden, not running, no breathing sound, any of that, but those alders were going click, 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 and that's that bear coming dead to us. And he was walking to us, click, click, and he was sitting down, and I had my knee on his back. I remember when I was guiding him, I had my knee on his back, and I could feel him coming undone about it. And I said, look, wait till he gets to the edge, and we're going to I said, you be ready, and we're going to get another bullet in him. And I'm watching, I've got the binoculars up, and I can see him coming to the edge, and he stops. This bear was full alert, and I'll tell you why in a minute when we find out. But I see, and there's an alder like this, and the limbs and the Y on it's probably 2.5 foot, and pretty big alder. And I said, you see that Y in that alder? And he said, yeah. I said, put it right above there. I said, you can see the hair above there. And of course, he didn't see the hair. But he shoots, and of course he's jacked. And I joked around telling the story sometimes he might have hit Anchorage down in Alaska when he shot. And when he shot, that bear charged. And this is a for real charge. And that bear hits that alder, and that Y is on his body like this. And that bear was pushing on those alders and snapping and just raising Cain. And I said, now remember, 2 bullets. I said, he's coming. Shoot him again, bolt the gun. He bolts, no hit. The bear turns and breaks and goes down the edge and comes out, and there's like a little opening road. And here he's coming. That same front and back. And I'm not paying attention to him. I'm paying attention to that. And I just take his rifle and I peel up and I let him get about 30 yards and shoot him dead between the eyes and roll him. And I bolted it, and I'm talking to him. I'm not paying. He's from here to that cabinet. And I said, oh, man, you killed a great grizzly. It's great. He's beautiful. And I can hear him back there. And I turn around, and he's gone from the planet. He's in the fetal position. I asked my dad when I got back, I said, do you ever see anybody like that? And he said, World War II. And he said they called it shell-shocked. And I said, what'd y'all do for it? He said, best thing over there was to slap the you-know-what out of him. But he said that sounds exactly like the guys being shell-shocked in World War II. But he was gone. Got him back. But he was, bless his heart, he was scared to death. I mean, it fried him. Got him back up. Tried to get, he didn't want anything to do with the bear. I said, look, the plane's not coming. We went down there, skinned him, packed him back. And that night they had a, the rolls that electrical wire come on, that those wooden rolls, and the camps all had one in it, and you used them as tables out by the fire pit. And I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, we're hundreds of miles in the bush. And the secret to those bear hides is you got to cool them down. You got to get them cold or the hair will pull. So I always prop the mouth open. You take everything out by the skull. The next day you'd get the skull out if it's late in the day. But I'd prop the mouth open trying to get air and cool in there. And I'd drape that hide over that spool. That spool probably 6 feet very around. And there was one thing of wine left in that camp. He got into that night, and we were laying there, and I heard him about 1 o'clock get up and go out there and relieve himself. And he comes back in, and I hear him, and we're laying there, and he goes, Moultrie. And I said, yeah. I said, why wait? He goes, I can't take that bear. I said, man, you kill that bear. I said, that's a great bear for you. And he goes, man, I walked out there and that moon's shining, and all I see is that skull and that deal open and that bear coming. He said, I can't take that bear. I said, no. I said, we'll get back. And so the float plane came in and got us the next day. I flew out with him. We went back to camp. He's telling everybody that story about everything. And of course, the master guide goes, how was it? And I said, it was tight. But, you did what you're supposed to do. And he flew out. We came back, and I said, look, I'll never tell that story. That's your choice. That's your bear. We come back, and we go to dinner. His wife was good friends with Patty and I, and we go to dinner. And he starts telling the story. And I'm saying, of course, I hadn't told Patty about it. She's sitting there with them eyes. Like, wait a minute, I hadn't heard this. And he tells it just exactly the way it is, all that. And his wife just can't believe it, that his wife's kind of an outdoorsy kind of woman, and she's like, I can't believe that got a hold of you. Like, he said, yeah. And, of course, Patty was chow. Afterwards, we got out of there. I thought you were going to tell me about George's. I said, well, I was. It just didn't happen yet. But that was close. That was tough. I mean, that was a tough deal. But that same deal, you ask about what did it. The equipment was right. The whole preparation was right. To get your guy's license, you have to know what to do in those circumstances. You know how to drop that bear and get him killed. All that was right. You knew you had to have multimedia and advanced first aid to get your guy's license. You knew what to do with your guys in camp, take care of them. All that was right. But did it just happen? Yeah. We had 3 of those in my time there that I'm talking about guys that I knew would come uncorked, and you just can't. I mean, men's men, but it was tough. And in 30 years, I had 3 of them.
Why was the bear still fully alert? Did he shoulder punch him?
Gut shot. He wasn't alert. He was mad. Gut shot him. Only time I've ever seen a gut shot animal roll over forward like that. I thought he'd hit him in the front and the shoulders. By him, he just like you were rolling a flip, like a gymnast deal.